to say. Sunday gave me the power divine. I'll let my little light shine. Oh, this little light of mine, Lord, I'm gonna let it shine all in Mississippi.
We present Part 6 of This Little Light, a series of documentaries on Mississippi in 1964.
If one thinks back to the beginning of the civil rights movement in Mississippi, one of the dramatic early events was at the Bergland High School in southern Mississippi, where one or two of the students went down to the bus station to attempt to integrate it in the wake of the Freedom Rides, which had occurred the spring before. These students were then expelled. When that happened, the entire student body of the Bergland High School resolved not to return to school until their expelled comrades were reinstated. Now, if one considers that this was at the beginning of the movement, it gives one a taste of the kind of heroic action which these youngsters may take next fall.
I would like to say to the students who cooperate with us today, we had 100% cooperation of the high school department. Now, in the near future, in fact, tomorrow, we must have that same cooperation. Now, I believe that Charles stated that we're not going to class tomorrow. Is that what he said? Yeah. All right. Now, I had a report that said if the students don't come to class tomorrow, so he was going to close his school down. But now, you must look at this. If Mr. Alltime closes his school down, the student will have 3 weeks this summer to rest. But Mr. Alltime will have 3 weeks of hell.
When Staunton Lynd, the first speaker you heard, predicted that the Freedom School program would have an immediate impact on Mississippi, the summer was yet to get underway. And yet by August, the first Mississippi school boycott had taken place in Shaw, led in part by Aaron German, a young Negro high school student in the second voice you heard. Aaron was talking to us on the first day of the boycott that closed Shaw's Negro McEvans High School. McEvans' 1,600 students were in school during the summer, because during part of the white school year, the young Negro people of the cotton areas of Mississippi are needed to chop or pick cotton.
We don't go to school when school starts in summer, starts in July, and we go to school July and August. And sometimes, if school don't start like it's supposed to start in July, then we have to go to school in the first part of September, and then we'll be out the rest of part of September and October and go back in November.
Why are you out in September and October?
Pick cat.
And why are you out in June and last part of May?
We're out to chop cotton.
These three young people were leaders of the Shaw boycott, and still are student leaders in their community. In other words, your education revolves around cotton.
Yeah.
I have the sense that almost all of Mississippi, at least this part of the Delta, revolves around cotton. What other things are geared to the cotton crop and the needs of cotton?
Any kind of work you do comes from cotton. If it's ginning, it comes from picking cotton. If it's driving the tractor, you're driving the tractor to break the land for the plant cotton.
What do your fathers do, or parents?
I'm not with my father, but he farmed in Cleveland.
What does your mother do?
Nothing. Stay at home every day.
I know my father and my stepfather, and he's a carpenter.
How much can a carpenter make in a town like Shaw?
I don't know how much he can make, but mine doesn't make $50 a week.
Yeah. That's a lot better than chopping cotton, is it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Because the average on chopping cotton, if you chop 5 days, well, you got $15, and then you have to eat lunch out of that.
My family, my mother, my auntie, she doesn't work. My uncle, he works at the gin.
At the gin?
Yeah.
That's not a full year job. That's not all year job, is it?
No, it isn't. No.
So he just works during ginning season?
Yeah.
What is it? That's about a month or 6 weeks of work?
About a month.
What's he do during the rest of the year?
Sit around the house.
How much does he make? Do you know what he can make while he's working at ginning?
He makes about $800.
About $800 total.
Yeah.
And so that you have to live more or less on that for the rest of the year.
Yeah.
What age, let's see, you're all 16 and 17, right?
Yeah.
What age did you begin, if you have, chopping cotton?
I started at 11.
You were 11 years old when you began.
Yeah.
And when you were 11, how long did you work a day?
Well, we worked 10 hours.
Mm-hmm. And how much did you get paid for that 10 hours work?
$3.
Now, you get paid every day after work. Why don't you describe, one of you, or take me through a day?
You get up, your mother gets you up, because if it was left to you, you wouldn't go. They'll get you up by 4, maybe sometime 3:30 like that. And you have to be to the field at 5 in order if you want to get back at 4 that evening. And get up, you eat your breakfast, and then people come around on the truck, whoever you go with, pick you up, and you go by the store and get some lunches, or you bring it from home. And then you go to the field. When you get out to the field, whoever be driving the truck, hurry up and start, y'all, before the man come out here. They be doing like that. They be hollering at you, and you get mad, and you say what you feel like saying, going to the field. And chop to 12.
And so at 12 o'clock you stop.
Mm-hmm.
And what do you do then?
Eat lunch and go back at 1. If you want to get off early, you go back at 12:30, take 30 minutes off for lunch, and go back and get off at 3:30 like that.
Then you're through for the day chopping cotton, and then what do? You come home and...
Come home, get a cool bath, and go to sleep. And you might want to go to the movie tonight. Most children do, but old people be broke down, tired, and stay at home.
Oh, yeah, I'm going down the road. I'm going away to leave you. Every time don't get no better here. I'm down the road, I'm gone. Yeah, when I first started chopping, take it down though, to be my home. Yeah, first started chopping, take it down to be my home.
Shaw is a Mississippi Delta town, a small rural community in Bolivar County, north of Indianola and east of Greenville. It is cotton country, low, flat, hot, and humid. Huge cotton fields with mile-long rows stretch in every direction, broken at their borders by rows and clumps of delta vegetation. The cotton was low in August of 1964. It was a bad crop, but the pale yellow flowers in blossom when I drove through the fields are beautiful until you know the price that has been paid to raise them. Shaw is divided into white and black, and the black part of town strikes anyone who drives into it for the first time, like Morris Rubin, a school teacher from New York City who was one of the summer volunteers assigned to the Shaw Freedom School.
My initial impression of Shaw was amazement. I didn't know that there were still places like Shaw, or there were places like Shaw in the United States. There was a street without any pavement. There was an open sewer. There were chickens running back and forth across the road. There were houses that weren't painted. There was one house with a Model A Ford parked alongside it. It reminded me very much of photographs taken by Ben Shahn and others during the 30s.
Like many volunteers, Morris Rubin heard about the project during the winter of 1963. Then at the training session in Oxford, Ohio, he asked to be sent to a rural area and was assigned as a Freedom School teacher in Shaw. The regular school in Shaw, McEvans, is no better than any other Negro school in Mississippi. The building is spanking new and handsome, newer in fact than the white school at the other side of town. But the laboratories are without test tubes or equipment. The shop has been converted into another classroom. There is no cold water fountain, nor lockers.
We don't have no foreign language, and we have no source of government.
What do you take?
I take chemistry, English and literature, second year algebra, bookkeeping, music. And that's all.
Well, you know, we used to take, at one time we had a Negro superintendent, and the school was burned down. They said he did it, so he had to leave Mississippi. And that's when they took away American government, foreign languages, and shorthand.
Since the movement's, of course, been in the Delta for at least 2 years now, I should think some of the students might ask questions about the movement and civil rights. First of all, let me ask you if they do.
The only class that these civil rights questions occur in is English class. And most of the time it started like this. The boys be arguing about it. Some of them not for it and others is, but the majority of the boys is for it. So they get to arguing, and she tell them to shut up. And they don't hush, and she make them tell what they're talking about. And then she get angry and tell them that don't get angry with the other boy because they have their personal opinions about things. And then she's not for it. She's always for the one that isn't, for the freedom movement like that, like our English teacher. I don't know where to start. Some of them okay and some of them take for the principal. See, he kind of fresh, you see. He messed around with, talking jab to a lot of high school girls. And some of the men faculty do too. And the ladies, well, some of them drink and stuff like that.
It's only one. It's only one. He's Coach. He's a very good teacher, but the rest, especially the principal, I don't like his attitude. He's a very uncomfortable sort of principal, He's always hollering about Mr. Superintendent this and Mr. Superintendent that and Mr. Superintendent that. See, he's scared. He about to scare the principal. I saw him, and he don't care what happened to the student, just as to keep his job.
What did you actually do in the Freedom Schools in Shaw?
The school eventually evolved into a discussion group, which was held by George Robbins, who was a philo major with a very heavy interest in politics and political action, and myself. And we worked with pretty much the same kids. And George's emphasis, I think, was on a description of the power structure of Mississippi, and also on possibilities of changing it economically, etc. My emphasis was on the freedom movement itself and on the responsibilities of leadership within the movement. Many of the kids had been involved in the movement for a long time, and there were some natural leaders there, but I felt that they needed training in the problems and techniques of leadership. So it became kind of a wandering seminar, really, which would be held in rooms or over coffee or over beer, or a discussion group, basically.
These wandering seminars did not fall on deaf ears, nor were they the first introduction the Shaw students had to the existence of a movement. As we said, SNCC had been in the Delta for 2 years, and one of the organizations established in the high schools was the Mississippi Student Union.
The Mississippi Student Union was a group of students that had gotten together and organized themselves. And we were trying to work on getting the parents to really participate in the movement, which was the main problem.
Do you remember when that was formed?
The Student Union had just been going for a few months, but we started participating in the movement in '62.
Were you in one of Morris's seminars?
Yes.
Could you tell us briefly what you talked about there?
Well, as he said, developing leadership among the people in the neighborhoods.
It was in this context that a seemingly unimportant incident took place in the middle of August.
Well, on a Friday afternoon, we had a football game, about 95-degree weather, and we had invited the volunteers over to the game. They came over and they were rooting for McEvans Warriors, and then we asked them to come to a fundraising dinner we were having. So they went over there for the dinner and they bought it, and
the cook asked them to come inside the cafeteria and eat.
The lady who was in charge of the cafeteria first asked us to come in and sit down and eat there. It was this time that Mr. Altheimer, the principal, told us we couldn't eat there. We would have to get permission from the superintendent. And we found out his office was in Shaw, and by that time our spaghetti would get cold. So we turned around and we ate our dinner on the step going into the cafeteria.
Some of the kids came out there and asked them what happened. And they said we were asked out of the cafeteria. And everybody said we were boycott. Just like that.
The kids said that?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so we boycotted.
Mm-hmm. And when the bell sounded, no one went into class. And one of the staff members came out. First all the students went out on the tree. And they were singing out under the tree, and everybody started coming. They was running. They say, everybody go to the tree. Everybody went to the big tree. Wasn't nobody go in for class. Some of the children lost. They didn't know where others was. And so the staff member came out there and told us what was the problem. And every time that he asked what was the problem, the children yelled. And after they yell, he'll hold up his hand, to cool down the noise. And then they still wouldn't say nothing and say, what's the problem? And they say, here come Koch. Say, Koch will tell you the problem. So he came over here. Koch didn't say nothing. So Aaron say, Koch knows the problem. The teachers know the problem, and the student knows the problem. When he said the student knows the problem, all the students yell. And they still can't get no sense out of us. So he said, Mr. McCain said, well, the best thing for us to do, why don't we go to the gym and talk things over? So went to the gym, got to the gym, the children still hollering, they were singing down the hall and everything. Went to the gym, had to get them quiet down first, and then they started to explain their problem. Of course, no one's going to agree with the students, Everything we said, they object to what was said.
And while it was in progress, one of the boys came over and asked us to come over there. And I went over there first. And when I walked in, I saw there were about 400 students lined up on the, must be about 500 on the bleachers alongside the gym, which they also use as an auditorium. And they gave a tremendous cheer. I knew it wasn't for me. It was because, I was a volunteer. And, it was a very chilling experience because it was such a fantastic amount of feeling. Then the teachers were up there trying to reason with them. And, it was curdling. They gave them the same arguments that I used to hear from white people when we were talking about the first school boycott in New York, You're going to leave school, and how can you sacrifice school and what school is trying to do for you? And then telling them that they should take time, and telling them that the problem was not in the school, and how could they solve the problem in the school, and they were only damaging things, and what could they accomplish? And the same nonsense that they have been hearing over and over again, and the children weren't buying it.
School was turned out that afternoon, and we went over to the Freedom School and had lunch there. And that night we decided that we would have a boycott on school.
Aaron German, who was the president of the Mississippi Student Union, and I had quite a long discussion during the mass meeting while it was going on, which we talked about what would happen to the children if there were a boycott, the leaders, etc. And Aaron's feeling during our discussion, and as we discussed, was he couldn't possibly recommend a school boycott because of the dangers involved. But while we were talking, Jim was inside, and Charles Bond, another boy, was in there, and they were whipping up the students to a great deal of enthusiasm for the idea of a boycott.
Friday evening by the students. It was only planned Friday evening for the cafeteria. But as things came out today, it seems as if it had to come out for the whole school. And how it happened to be the whole school, well, during the lunch hour, since everyone ate in the cafeteria, well, since then the principal rejoiced at it. He seen wasn't nobody eating, and then he comes in and he flashes his money around, his $100 bill, and says, I buy what I want, I got my own money. You don't have to give me any money. See, that's why I was telling you that does from the students, where he don't care anything about us. See? He is making his salary to support his family and himself. He don't care how we make it. In other words, he is getting more money from us than he is giving us education. Since he said, don't nobody come to class tomorrow. If you don't have no class tomorrow, you're going to close the school down. Let him close the school down. What I should say, in order to find out if he's going to close the school down, which I don't think he is, maybe he just bluffing or something. The way I see it, students go to school tomorrow, don't go to no class, please. What we had meeting at today at lunch? Are you willing to be there tomorrow at 7 o'clock? Are you willing to have class there tomorrow at 7 o'clock? It won't be no biology. It won't be no mathematics class. It won't be no English class. It won't be no typing class. But it will be a class. You know what the class will be? The Mississippi Student Union Politics.
Following the mass meeting, about 12 of the students, including the 3 or 4 leaders you have heard on this tape, held a strategy meeting in a vacant shack that served as the Freedom House. 3 volunteers and I were present, participating in the discussion.
And I think that a lot of what has been discussed up until then kind of bore its fruition in that session. 2 things that I think of. When the demands were originally discussed, the first things were such things, if I remember right, as putting sawdust on the gym floor for proms and things like this, and the very real problem of new lockers not new lockers, but lockers for the football team and lighting for the field, etc. But as the discussion developed, and developed mostly without any direct direction from those of us who were there, the volunteers who were there, the kids began to talk about the educational needs of the school.
In the demands we drew up 4. One was more textbooks, which we didn't have, and the only textbooks we had were from the white school, hand-me-downs. And we wanted equipment in our laboratory and our shop. We had the room, but we didn't have any equipment, period. And we wanted some foreign languages and other courses that would get us into accredited colleges, because the stuff they were teaching us there would barely get us into one of Mississippi colleges. And then there was we wanted more books in our library.
The 4 demands were not met and have not been met. That summer, McEvans High School was closed in response to the student boycott.
At 9:30, the school was closed, and the campus was loaded with troopers and cops. And the county superintendent had come to the school with the county sheriff on one side and the local sheriff on the other, and had gone in to talk with the principal. We had to make up for August, so we started the school in October when we usually start in November.
There were, however, at least some positive consequences of the boycott in Shaw, despite the fact that the demands were not met.
probably the best thing that happened as a result of the boycott was that the parents of Shaw became quite strongly unified behind the students, and that there were 250 of them that went over to protest the early opening of the school without having met the demands. And that, from what I can gather, the parents have now taken over the leadership of the movement in Shaw.
It was a big step forward, because before the summer, everything that was happening was primarily the students. And they worked with the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. The SCLC had been in, but they couldn't get the parents moving. The parents were afraid of the jobs they had, like working in some white woman's kitchen for 15 hours a week and chopping cotton for $3 a day for 10 hours a day.
So now Shaw, too, like communities throughout Mississippi, has found an issue on which to build an organization and a movement for social change. To what extent did the Freedom School program contribute to these changes in thinking? And what was their impact on these programs? Do you think that your going down was, how was it helpful?
My usual response to this question is to make the analogy with an iceberg. A little bit of the iceberg shows above the water. Most of it is underneath the water. I think that that part which is above the water has been changed very little, although some. But I think that there has been a real change which has occurred in the minds of the people, both the volunteers and the people the volunteers worked with. And I think that that real change is going to make a much more rapid change in the structure of Mississippi than people would have felt before the summer. I think, to a certain extent, we were successful there. I'm not particularly disappointed about there being no dramatic results from this one summer's work. I would be terribly disappointed if after 4 or 5 summers the McEvans High School was in the same miserable state that it is in right now.
You said when you began that one of the things you did in these seminars with Morris and the other teachers was talk about problems of leadership and questions like that. Do you think that the boycott would have been a different kind of boycott if these kinds of seminars and discussions had not taken place? In other words, do you think that there was any relationship between these discussions and the boycott?
I think the boycott would have been, but it would have been a lot different, because the kids wouldn't have been able to get together, get organized as easy.
Mm-hmm. This conversation with Jim took place in the winter of 1964 in New York City, for Jim had arranged for financial aid to attend a northern private school to continue his education. Ultimately, it will not be Northern volunteers who change the state of Mississippi, but Mississippians, and time and again civil rights workers emphasize that changes must be made there. Do you intend to go back to Mississippi, to Shaw?
Yes, I do.
Why?
Because it's home. And I really want to work in the movement. That's the main reason I wanted to go to school. Because what Mississippi really needed is educated Negroes. And I think I can get an education there.
Do you think your participation in these seminars in any way helped you to develop your ideas about returning to Mississippi? Do you think that it would have been, what I'm trying to get at is really, what you personally got out of these seminars, whether or not it changed you in any way?
Well, I think if I wouldn't have gone to those seminars and I would have been able to get out of Mississippi, I wouldn't have gone back. Oh, nobody wants to go back to Mississippi. And then it really got me involved and started me thinking. So I want to go back to Mississippi more than anything.
Yeah, when I first started shouting, take it down though, she'll be my home. Yeah, first started traveling. Take the Indianola to be my home.
This has been Part 6 of This Little Light, a series of documentaries on Mississippi in 1964. The programs were produced from studio and field recordings made in Mississippi by Chris Koch, Dale Miner, and Dave Welch. Production assistants were Kathy Dobkin and Willie Ross. The programs were written and produced by Chris Koch for Pacifica Radio.